The evening moon cast an eerie glow over the dense forest as Emma and her friends made their way along the narrow path. A breeze rustled through the trees, sending a flurry of fallen leaves skittering across the dirt trail. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl hooted. "Are you sure about this?" Emma whispered, shivering despite her coat. "It's getting late." "Come on, don't chicken out now," said Jason, flashing a crooked grin over his shoulder. "We'll find some clues to what happened to Connor and Megan. Maybe they're just lost in here." Though Jason sounded nonchalant, Emma noticed a tightness around his eyes that betrayed his own apprehension. The recent disappearances of several local teens had thrown the small town of Willow Creek into turmoil. With no witnesses or explanation, fear and suspicion were running rampant. Emma followed Jason further along the trail, his flashlight beam bouncing ahead through thickening trees. Beth walked close by Emma's side, while the twins, Steve and Stacy, trailed several paces behind, whispering nervously to each other. They had all grown up together, and the loss of their friends shook Emma to her core. She hoped this search would provide answers, though a gnawing worry gnawed at her gut. What if they found more than they bargained for in these endless woods? After about 20 minutes of hiking without incident, the group decided to split up to cover more ground. "Meet back here in an hour," said Jason, consulting his watch. "And yell if you find anything." Emma proceeded on alone, constantly scanning the dense undergrowth for any clues. The crunch of fallen leaves and twigs was the only sound breaking the heavy silence. As minutes dragged into an eternity, her unease grew stronger with each passing shadow glimpsed at the edge of her flashlight beam. She was about to turn back when a flash of color caught her eye several yards off the trail. Fighting rising panic, Emma cautiously approached and discovered a ripped backpack half hidden under ferns and moss. It was Megan's favorite pink JonSport bag. "Jason, Beth," Emma shouted, hoping her voice carried through the oppressive stillness. Only the scurrying of small animals answered her calls. She was completely alone. Dread flooded Emma's veins like ice. Night was falling rapidly as dark clouds shrouded the moon and stars. Without her friends, she stood no chance if whatever lurked out here meant her harm. Fighting the urge to run blindly, she tried to retrace her steps, but the forest looked alien in the gloom. Emma stumbled into a small clearing just as complete darkness enveloped the woods. Her panicked breathing echoed loudly in the void. A howl pierced the night, chillingly close. Heavy footfalls approached at a run. "Who's there?" Emma squeaked in a hoarse whisper, petrified with terror. A familiar voice called her name, and Beth emerged from the shadows, eyes wide with fear. "We need to find the others now," she gasped, gripping Emma's arm. They hurried back toward the rendezvous point, but found no signs of the twins or Jason. An eerie chuckle drifted through the trees, followed by a muffled scream in the distance. Beth froze, face drained of color. "What was that?" Emma whimpered, clinging to Beth. Before Beth could respond, an unseen force crashed through the undergrowth behind them. They spun around to see only empty forest, but the intense sensation of being watched pierced Emma to her core. "Run!" Beth shrieked, yanking Emma's arm as phantom footfalls gained on them. They pelted down the trail at breakneck speed, but the encroaching darkness disoriented them further with each branching path. Soon, Beth lost her footing on the treacherous ground and went sprawling with a shriek of pain. "Go! Go!" Beth screamed from the dirt, clutching her ankle. Behind her, a shadow detached itself from the trunks, eyes glinting with predatory intent. Emma hesitated for a split second before fleeing blindly into the night, tears streaming as Beth's ragged sobbing faded behind her. She careened through brambles that tore her skin and clothes, oblivious to anything but escape from the horrors pursuing her through the endless trees. Somehow she ended up at the edge of a steep decline. Too panicked to stop, Emma plunged over the side and tumbled roughly down the ridge, bouncing off rocks and roots until landing in a crumpled heap at the bottom. Agonized wails escaped her lips as white-hot pain lanced up her leg. Through tear-blurred eyes, she glimpsed a misshapen figure staring down at her from the edge, wicked amusement twisting its alien features. Then, merciful darkness took her. Dawn's pale light found Emma waking among fallen leaves and shadows, disoriented and afraid. Her mind reeled with fractured memories of the previous night, the clowns' monstrous faces leering from the edge, Beth's screams echoing into silence. None of it seemed real in the sober light of day, yet her twisted ankle throbbed with a cruel reminder. Wincing, she dragged herself onto an elbow and scanned the forest floor for any sign of her friends or the beings that pursued them. Only emptiness greeted her searching gaze. A thick morning fog swirled sluggishly between the ghostly trunks, muffling all sound. She was alone. Despair threatened to overwhelm her as the full gravity of her situation sunk in. Stranded and injured deep in these malevolent woods, exposed prey for whatever lurked within. She considered waiting helplessly for rescue, but knew her only chance was putting distance between herself and this cursed place. Answers be damned. Emma retrieved her phone from her pocket on instinct, déjà vu striking her. How many times had she scrolled idly through it while her friends slipped further into the woods, never to return? But of course there was no signal this far out. With a resigned sigh, she stuffed it away and faced the arduous task of standing on her injured leg. Pain exploded white-hot as she placed her weight upon it, nearly blacking out once more. Gritting her teeth, she leaned against the nearest tree trunk, catching her breath. After several excruciating minutes, the agony dulled to a throb and she was able to hobble forward cautiously. She made slow progress, pausing every dozen steps to rest and scan the ghostly mist for any sign of the alien presences that stalked her. Yet she saw nothing but the eldritch fog swirling hypnotically around ancient trunks. Still, she could not shake the overwhelming sensation of being watched from just beyond sight, tracking her limping form through soundless forests. At one point, she stumbled upon a familiar twisted tree and realized with dread that she had been going in circles all this time, further from escape. Desperation clawed at her chest, but collapsing into madness would solve nothing. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other, blindly stumbling eastward toward where she guessed the town lay. Suddenly, bone-chilling laughter echoed distantly through the mist, rising subtly in volume and number. Emma dashed behind the nearest wide trunk and peered around it wildly, breath caught in her throat. Wispy gray phantoms drifted between the trees but offered no definite shapes, only suggestions of elongated limbs and grinning orifices. Were the clowns herding her further into the misty labyrinth? Panic threatened to overwhelm reason. She knew if they closed in, her fate would be sealed. With a Herculean effort, Emma pushed herself away from the gnarled tree and bolted as swiftly as her injury allowed, ignoring the jagged bolts of pain shooting up her leg. The eerie laughter gained in volume and tempo behind her, as if enjoying the hunt. Somehow, mercifully, the veil of fog abruptly thinned ahead to reveal Willow Creek's outskirts emerging like ghosts from the mist. But her pursuers' mocking tones were so close now, as if they knew the prey was cornered. With a final burst of adrenaline, Emma crashed out of the woods and careened down the quiet suburban street, too exhausted and spent to shout for help just yet. She had escaped their domain for now, but her desperate flight left her collapsed in the damp morning dew, barely conscious. As her vision swam, Shapes coalesced and dissipated mockingly at the forest's edge, gleefully bidding their farewells. Only darkness answered their muffled guffaws, fading into the mists once more as she slipped away into blissful oblivion at last. Thanks for listening to this story. Put a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.